Good day. Today I'm going to be reviewing Book 2 of the Ciphas Cain Omnibus, entitled Caves of Ice. Now, Caves of Ice is a fairly adequate sequel. It's not groundbreaking like the first, and it's nowhere near as memorable as the third. But in and of itself, it's a fairly entertaining read. Now, in this novel, Cain and company are called to an ice planet. They are there to try and stop an orc invasion from taking over a promethium refining station. Essentially, promethium is the Imperium source of low-level energy, similar to petrochemicals are today. Essentially, they're used in small vehicles like tanks or trucks or things like that. Anything that really can't be powered by plasma or fusion energy. Now, Cain, of course, wants to stay out of the firing line, and he does this by embarking on a search for a missing miner. But when he descends into the Caves of Ice, he finds something he never expected to see. So let's crack open Caves of Ice and take a look.
They decided not to bring back the chapter quotes, which I think was a very good move because most of the chapter quotes were unnecessary at best and idiotic at worst. For example, the general that was afraid of his own soldiers. And so the novel begins with Cain recounting some of his various adventures, like the time he was rescuing hostages from an Eldar Reaver citadel, and the time he had to go into a Necron tomb world. Now, this novel takes place right after the first one, so it's chronologically the next in order. Now, at this point, he has been with the regiment for 1 year. As they attempt to land, they come under fire from an orc band. The thing is, orcs are terrible shots. Really, they fire just for the sound of it more than anything else. Still, the pilot is frightened by the fact that people are shooting at him, and wants to abort the landing. And Cain states that that would be a very bad idea and they only have limited life support. And the pilot responds by saying they have a safety margin. At which time, Cain puts his hand on his laser pistol and states, "You don't." And Cain states that the chance of the orcs actually hitting anything was astronomical. The only thing is that whenever you say something like that, the astronomical always happens. And so they get hit in the number 2 engine and start losing power. The pilot responds with, "Astronomical, eh?" And after a few harrowing moments, they make it back down to the ground. Whereupon the pilot throws up on Cain's boots. And as soon as he exits the shuttle, he begins to complain about the cold, stating that the wind was bone-numbing and that it seemed like needles of ice seemed to penetrate his temples. Essentially, it was, "It's cold, damn cold." And after a brief firefight with some orcs, Cain finally makes it into the administrative center of the Promethium station. And so the administrative officials and the military personnel meet, and they have a meeting about what exactly is going on. One of the recent events is a miner went missing in the mining tunnels, which the orcs shouldn't have had access to in the first place. This will become important later. And of course, humans being human, they're unable to put aside their petty squabbles, even in the face of an orc invasion. Since the administrative drones can't get their act together, Cain simply declares martial law. Of course, the administrative idiots are not altogether pleased with this declaration, and like the Dunkovs that they are, they say, "You can't do that!" Whereupon Cain replies, "Yes, she can," and proceeds to give an explanation as to why she can. Of course, the administrative drones decide to say that that was unacceptable. Cain, the colonel in charge, states that they live with it unless they prefer the alternative. And then Cain states, "Fine," and drops his laser pistol onto the table and states that he will execute anybody trying to obstruct Imperial control. And with that statement, the administrative drones rescind their arguments. The regiment begins preparing for the incoming orc horde, and Cain goes in search of the missing miner. He goes in search of the miner for a number of reasons. The first is he wants to stay out of the firing line, and the other is he wants to see just where the mining tunnels go, so that way the orcs can't come around behind them. And so with the plans laid out, our jaunty band descends into the Caves of Ice. And so Cain and his jaunty band search the Caves of Ice and find absolutely nothing. They just wander around for a little while until they finally reach the end. And when they do, they find that the ice at the very end of the tunnels is actually somewhat weak, and it ends up breaking under the weight of one of the soldiers. As Cain tries to haul said soldier up, they both end up falling into the hole, where they encounter an alien. But Cain just shoots at it, which drives it away. After the alien threat is over, they find that there's some other tunnels underneath the main mining tunnels. And with that bit of news, they return to the mining station. Upon returning to the mining station, Cain is greeted with even worse information. The ship that brought them to the planet detected a large vehicle that's roughly 80 meters in height. That, of course, is a Gargant. Essentially, a Gargant is a super heavy fighting vehicle, similar to an AT-AT, although an AT-AT is about 15 meters in height and carries 2 large cannons, whereas this thing carries numerous large cannons and 1 super heavy cannon. Essentially, 1 shot from this vehicle can destroy the entire base. Also, there is an evacuation going on as well, mainly because they wanted to get all the civilians out of the mining station just in case they couldn't hold it. In order to destroy the Gargant, they lay some charges under the ice in the hopes that it will walk over the charges and be destroyed by them. Cain then comes up with a plan to go back into the mining tunnels so that they can figure out where the new tunnels that they found lead. And so, for a second time, Cain and another jaunty band descend into the caves of ice. So now they're attempting to scout out where these new tunnels that they found lead. The roster this time is a completely different squad than the last one. One of the soldiers is named Voorhees, as a nod to the popular horror character. And they are also accompanied by a tech priest. A tech priest is just what it sounds like. It's a technical priest. Essentially, they're engineers, except they worship the technology that they repair. They believe in what's called a machine spirit. You see, in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, technology is looked upon as sort of semi-divine. The newly discovered tunnels are laid out somewhat like a maze, but Cain is able to cope with this due to the fact that he has something called a hiver's instinct, even though his home planet has never been divulged. As they continue on, they find out that the tunnels are not altogether that old. In fact, they date it to around the time when the orcs actually appeared. This is due to the fact that they were created by a creature called an amble. The ambles arrived on the orcs' ship, because really the orcs didn't land, they just sort of crashed into the planet. And in that time, they carved the ice tunnels. And it is after this realization that we finally have a
boss fight!
Jurgen, give us some elbow room, I shouted. Jurgen then fired at the wall. He was just in time, too, because an instant later, the newly frozen wall burst in on us in a hail of glittering ice shards, and the living nightmare I counted before was among us. By sheer foul luck, I was closest to it, and I barely had time to draw a weapon before it was on me. This close, a gun would be all but useless, so I instinctively drew my chainsaw. An impossibly long arm, tipped with the talent I had glimpsed before, swung at me, and would have probably disemboweled me had I not deflected the blow. The other troopers attempted to get a clear line of fire, but my foe and I were circling too close and too fast for them to have any hope of getting one. I dove in under the thing's barrel chest, which barely came up to my chin, and tried to avoid the huge mandibles which snapped at my face. Bizarrely, the thing's arms were jointed in such a way that the closer I was to it, the harder it would be to reach me. I swung the humming blade at its thorax, feeling the teeth bite home, and was rewarded with a spray of ichor and foul-smelling viscera. It screamed again, and opened its mandibles impossibly wide, and brung its head down to snap at me. This was precisely what I had been hoping for. So I was ready and waiting, thrusting the tip of my trusty chainsword up through its maw, and opened up a wide gash which split the side of its head, thus killing it.